They're getting rid of all their remoteness. Our company.
That's what my company did. Said never do, never
They never did away with the remoteness. Yeah, I think companies, some have found that they I think everyone wanted to do away with it at least all the time, and some people won't allow it.
do. My company said, well, the deal is you have to move to Georgia.
Mm.
They were moving. They had a big office in Georgia. And I was talking to a friend of mine after I left, after I retired.
Uh, well, yeah, when the company moves, that's really tough. But look, so much of her, I mean, her work is all digital media. She works for a company that does digital media, saw online stuff. But the meetings, collaborative meetings, and she was working for a company that just has Disney as a client. It's called Omni Group, and so she was working for Disney's older stuff. She was working on Hulu and that kind of stuff, FX, and now she's going to. She's now took a new job working. She's now her client is Hasbro, so she's working for Mr. Potato Head. I told her communications, but she's always wanted to work in advertising. It was weird. Yeah, so she's working for Hasbro as of effective next week. No, she did it. Yeah, she did it all on her own. Yeah. No, it's all digital. I told my daughter while she was in college, I told my daughter in college, do not do anything in mainstream, you know, display media, meaning newspapers, magazines, radio, TV. I said, that's dead. And remember, I kind of grew up in the advertising business with my dad. I mean, my dad's main job was selling advertising for his media. I said, those media forms are dead. Get into digital and only do digital. And she did. And look, I mean, every kid wants to do the hottest new thing, and she did. And yeah, digital media. I mean, I mean, she'll have a career in digital media forever if she wants. I mean, I don't know if she wants to expand into other stuff, but she could work. She could do what she's doing. She basically, she. This is now going out on everything, but no, she basically buys digital space for whoever her client is. So when an ad pops up on your phone or on your yeah, so she buys ad space for people. Reverend Lynn, welcome. Welcome. I did. I already announced that, by the way, just so you know. I did. Yeah. Last week. Yeah, I went home Wednesday night. I said I felt sick. I was sick. Yeah. But I'm better. I mean, I was sick for like I mean, I never got that sick. But yes, I was positive for the vid. So I never had a fever. I never had a cough. I never was, I already said this already. What? What? I hope you don't, but I was, I didn't give you a hug, but yeah. So welcome everybody. For those who are online, you got nothing to worry about. But no, I, I did feel sick over the weekend though. I did not go out. I, yeah,
Forgive me for not knowing, but is this happening because the COVID has uh, evolved to a different strain, or
yes,
it's because we've all
yes,
been
yes. They're calling
inoculated?
this strain flirty. I don't know if that's, it's called flirty. I'm
You're
not
not
making it
kidding.
up. Somebody told me this new one is flirty. I don't know with COVID. I was flirting with COVID. It's flirty COVID. So yeah, I didn't go out. I mean, it's not only because I didn't want to get anyone sick. I didn't feel like going out. I definitely felt beaten down, but I never was dizzy or
Is
whatever.
this
I had
because
it
we've been
twice.
inoculated?
I had it yes. And I had it 3 years ago, right before the inoculations, the vaccinations came out. And I had it and I also didn't even know I had it. That I think I was sick for a day. This time I pretty much felt sick for like 3 days until yesterday. I have a little congestion. That's all I had. Other than I had like heavier congestion. Other than I felt like I had a really bad sinus headache. That's it. So thankfully, but I talked to my buddy Dr. Mike, and he said some people are getting GI problems with the new strains of COVID. So I didn't have any of that, thankfully. But Yeah, just tell people, be careful, wash your hands, do what you need to do. But I mean, I mean, this was a cold, that's all it was. I swear. I mean, I promise you, I'm not underselling it. Yeah, that's what I heard too, but whatever. That's what I'm saying. Just wash your hands and, be careful. You never had it, I know. Well, that's because you don't hug anybody.
Please. Mary won't let me out
Oh,
for good reason. The first year and a half, Mary,
yeah, no, he's got health issues. Mike does, but yeah, I know people who did that stuff. Actually, in a lot of cases, I know they had health issues, and I have a friend who basically he's in his mid-50s. He locked himself away for 3 years. He didn't get it. He can't get it. He's got too many health issues. So yeah, it did work for people who decided to, that's what they had to do.
we're gonna not the last couple of weeks yet. And they're very, they wear masks everywhere they go, and when they dance, they're wearing masks.
Yeah, but I mean, the bottom line is you had to. When I say my friend lived in his base, he literally did not go out. I mean, he didn't go out.
Exactly what I
If you do that, you're gonna stay healthy. I mean, whatever. But it's a tough trade-off. Anyways, gosh, a lot of stuff happening, right? A lot of world stuff happening, stuff in our own community. Gosh, Diane Van Hook, done,
yeah.
out. I don't know the full story, but it was not good. I don't think people know the full story yet. But stuff like that, just tell you.
Rector and All Saints, gone.
What?
What's gone?
Did they say? The rector.
Resigned before they gave him.
But they didn't say why.
What's all saying?
It's the Episcopal, it's very big in Southern California. I'd say probably one of the top in the West Coast. It's a major, and they've gotten some coverage because they're kind of political. Well, kind of political. They're on the left side of the spectrum. And so they've gotten, some people have said that they've pushed the boundaries between what religious institutions can do. Look, I mean, we push the boundaries too, but I always make sure we have both sides. Like I've climbed trees. I saved a tree. It's still alive. Yeah, Reverend Lynn did too. Well, she didn't climb the tree, but she would have. Her son-in-law was in this, slept overnight in the tree. I didn't sleep overnight. I was going to, but I didn't. I was supposed to that night. No, no, I spoke to Mike Garcia and George Whitesides in the last few days to figure out what days they're going to come here. So both of you can figure out a night to come, and you'll have a chance to speak. But anyways, I don't know. I think yeah. I mean, I probably won't watch it live. Matt Brooks is that our RJC, the Republican Jewish Coalition, which it's a weird thing. Like it was basically started by the Adelsons. They started it and they funded it and they host it every year. They do a gala at their, not a gala, it's not the right word, convention at the Venetian every year in like November. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens this year. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening in the world. And so as we kind of go into I don't know. I I woke up, it was day 284. Man. I don't know. I just know that the people I talk to in Israel they want to get back to life, man. And I'm talking to people who live in the north who, don't know when they can go back home. And I don't know what to, like everybody wants this war to end, but
That's fast, I heard.
Yeah, but my hope was that if the leaders that, there's two leaders that Israel says that they need to take out, which is Sinwar and Deef. And supposedly they got Deef, but then that they didn't. And 90 other, a lot of civilians died in that. And it just, I don't know. Like, I don't know if those are real objectives. I don't even know. I don't know. I just know that I thought it would be over definitely by the summer, and it's now the summer. And I just don't know if we can go into, if we go into a new year. I don't know. I really thought that we'd have a chance this summer to have hope to look forward to, but I don't know. It's just, no, I don't think the world really can figure out how to get itself in a place where people don't keep getting hit, with stuff. I don't know. I just, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that you got to get through today. There is, and we're gonna read one of them today. There's no, I was thinking about this today. There's no organization of the Psalms other than people say, okay, there's 150 of them. It's roughly 5 books of 30. Some people have kind of organized it roughly like 30 Psalms per 5 sections, which mirrors the 5 books of the Torah. Some people have, kind of said, well, that was the organizing principle. It's not exactly 30, 30, and 30. But, the weird thing is that we'll get to, like, I wanted to get to a certain place before I kind of throw this out, but I'm throwing it out now. The organizational factors that go into Psalms, we need to read more of them for you to see that there's no chronological order. There's no real stylistic order. There are groupings of Psalms. When we get to the Psalms of Ascents, for example, in the 120s, where you'll see, oh, those Psalms all go together. But like, there's a Psalm we're going to read today, which is actually the next Psalm we're going to read, Psalm 29, which, like, 100 years ago, people thought it was a fairly late Psalm. The arguments amongst biblical scholars were, oh, it's a psalm from the post-exile period, from the 400s. And then when we discovered archaeological evidence from the Canaanites, we were like, no, this is a Canaanite psalm. And like, we stole this from the Canaanites. And then people started saying, this might be the earliest part of the Bible. So there are people who, and I'm telling you, those are scholars that I trust, and they're scholars who, trust me when I tell you, these are people who know their stuff. Psalms can't be, we can't say, okay, well, these first 30 Psalms are older, or they're, even if they're younger, they don't go like that. No, and we talked about this on Wednesday night, that the rabbis were puzzled by Psalms that were out of order. Why did David talk about Absalom in chapter 3 and then talks about Saul, in chapter 9, in Psalm 19? These are not following David's life chronologically. And they knew that. And they said, well, because, David wants to sing about something before. The juxtaposition of the Psalms has more to do with like his feelings than it does chronologically his life. Oh yeah. I mean, not only do we think some of them were not written by David, we think some of them were written 400 years after David lived. And some of them might have even been written, as I said, some of these Canaanite Psalms might have been written 100 years or 200 years before David lived. I think it's tough to push something out to 1200, which is what some people have said Psalm 29 is from, but definitely from David's time. And it kind of gets to this issue of, well, what is Psalms? And so I do want to get to a point a little further on. I mentioned at the very beginning that one of the interesting versions of Psalms that just came out, and it's not about one Psalm, it's about the Psalms really, is Paul Simon's his composition he just did a couple of years ago, which is called Psalms. And he's reflecting on his life through Psalms. And he said, I didn't know anything about Psalms. He says, I had a dream and I dreamt this. And he said, look, I'm not a religious person. He's like, I was never raised I wasn't raised religious. I mean, he's Jewish, obviously, but wasn't raised religious. And he said, I never really went to synagogue or church. I never went to any organized religious stuff. But he says, I don't know what to say other than this music came to me from another place. And I think it's quite powerful. He's really reflecting on life and on death and on people who've heard it I mean, I know a lot of people who are not religious people who've been touched by the music. And so when we get a little further along, we'll talk about it and I'll play a little bit of his stuff, but because we're not quite through enough of it to compare it. But if you want to, listen to it on Spotify or music, whatever music source you have, and start listening to it. It's called Psalms by Paul Simon, and it will make you cry a little bit. I mean, it's good. Has anybody heard it? Anybody out there heard it? Okay. Well, I encourage you to take a listen. But we're going to read and listen to some Psalms now. There's a Psalm coming up that some of you have heard musical versions of, and maybe we'll play a couple versions of some of these Psalms. But Rosemary, if you take us through Psalm 28, fairly short Psalm, and we'll talk a little bit about this Psalm.
O Lord, I call to you, my rock, do not disregard me. For if you hold aloof from me, I shall be like those gone down into the pit. Listen to my plea for mercy when I cry out to you, when I lift my hands toward your inner sanctuary. Do not count me with the wicked and evildoers who profess goodwill toward their fellows, while malice is in their heart. Pay them according to their deeds, their malicious acts, according to their handiwork, pay them. Give them their deserts. For they do not consider the Lord's deeds, the work of his hands. May he tear them down, never to rebuild them. Blessed is the Lord, for he listens to my plea for mercy. The Lord is my strength and my shield. My heart trusts in him. I was helped, and my heart exulted, so I will glorify him with my song. The Lord is their strength. He is a stronghold for the deliverance of his anointed. Deliver and bless your very own people, tend them and sustain them forever.
Yeah, and so you see it's only 9 verses. It is it definitely carries some of the messages that we've already come across. Again, the plea for salvation and for God's strength and power behind the writer is juxtaposed with take down the people who are bad, So there's well, he says to plea for mercy, tachanuni, which is the root for tachanun, which is the prayers that Jewish people oftentimes pray. Tachanun are certain prayers for mercy that we traditionally say as part of the morning service. There's certain days that we don't do tachanun, but the days that we do traditionally tachanun, these are special prayers for mercy, and some people have a tradition of actually leaning on their elbow while they pray tachanun, and there's again the special verses of tachanun that are pleas for mercy. But what's interesting about this is not just mercy for me, but take down the people who are doing bad. The prayer for strength and the prayer for deliverance are phrases that we're going to see a lot in Psalms. We'll actually see them a couple times today. Adonai oz lamo ma'oz yeshuot. The word oz, oz, is used a lot in the Psalms. It's strength. And so it's the root for, we use the word a lot for help and for I mean the name Uzziah, King Uzziah has his name, Oz is in there. But there's a lot of that phrase is used a lot in, or versions of the word Oz are used in different prayers. We're going to see one coming up in one of the next Psalms that actually is part of the Birkat HaMazon, the last words of Birkat HaMazon. But Uz is also the root for, well, a gun that Israel used for a long time, the Uzi. It's also a name in Israel. You know, Uzi was also during the 60s and 70s a more common, I guess people must have been born in the 40s and 50s, but it was a more common name for Israeli guys was Uzi. I don't see too many Uzis anymore, but Uzi or Uziel, God is my strength. Yeah, and you'll see that a lot. So again, very short psalm. It's a psalm, again, bad things should happen to the people who deserve it, and good things should happen to me. It's similar to some of the psalms, some of the language we're going to see in some of the next psalms. Any comments or questions or points that people want to? Yeah, this one for Psalm 28, I only because it's similar to Psalm 29. Psalm 29, I'm pretty sure was a Canaanite psalm. Psalm 28, I think people do it because it's part of they kind of see it as the same cycle. I mean, I guess from that standpoint, from its connections to that, but Psalm 29, we're going to see right now. No, it's Hebrew. It's Hebrew. No, this is Hebrew. This is Hebrew. Yeah.
You know, it's all new to me. I can cross-check.
Uh-huh.
Wikipedia, it says verse 9, right?
Mhm. Yep. Mm-hmm. It says verse 9 is the first verse of the paragraph. Yeah. Yeah, it's part of Pesukei de Zimra. Pesukei de Zimra are opening songs that we do in the morning. They're morning songs. They're morning prayers. Pesukei de Zimra is before the Shachrit service. We have these sections, and so yeah, it's yeah. So
Goes on to say the verse, because of its 10 words, is often used for
yes.
counting for the 10 people needed for a minyan.
Yep.
You know, it's interesting how you say everything we do.
Yeah.
Right. All the prayers, all the ritual. Right.
Mm-hmm.
We do it over and over and over. The same things has come from history and the rabbis, the professors, right? And so it's interesting to me, right? Needed for a minyan, the Jewish law forbids the numerical counting of people.
So you know what that means? So I'm leading the service, and it didn't have to be a rabbi, usually wasn't, is leading the minyan, right? He's counting the people. I can't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I go Hoshia et Amcha Uvarech. That's the way I counted the people with the 10 words of that phrase. So, there's Hoshia, there's Et, there's Amcha Uvarech. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So when I get to Olam, oh hey, there's Olam. I got my 10 guys. So that's what they did it. Well, no, it's only because it's 10. It's exactly 10. There's other sentences that are 10 words. This happened to be already part of the morning prayers, and so when they got to this prayer and they said, "Oh, you need a good way to count out 10 people. Count out those 10 words." It's a fluke. It's not like magic. It's a gimmick. Yeah, it's a way of saying it's a trick. It's like saying it's a mnemonic or whatever. It's a device. It's saying I'm using this instead of counting to 10. So it's a way of saying, look, there's another way that people do it. It's funny in Jewish, like in Orthodox world, they'll go, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4. They'll do that. I'm not kidding. I kind of laugh. You go like, not 1, not 2. So when they're counting out, like, they're counting out okay, we're putting 5 on 5, not 1, not 2, in basketball. They do that, like in Orthodox school. They'll say, not 1. No, you need 10 for traditionally in Judaism, you need 10 for a minyan for shachrit for the prayer, certain prayers. And so, everyone says, well, you need 10 for Mourner's Kaddish. Yeah, but you need 10 for every other prayer before the Mourner's Kaddish. It's not like it's Mourner's Kaddish you need 10 people for. It was because for the minyan to be considered a quorum, you needed 10 people to do certain prayers. But it was every other prayer before the Mourner's Kaddish. Well, no, look, we discussed it. We discussed it in Talmud class. Remember, no, but we talked about it. Do you need 10 people for there to be the divine presence? The divine presence needs 10 people. Well, then they say, well, you really only need 3. You really only need 2. And then they say, but isn't one person who's studying Torah, isn't God with them? So, it gets to that point. But I would say for the purpose of prayer, understanding what a quorum was for prayer, there was an understanding that certain prayers required a certain amount of people behind it in order for there to be the energy to consider it to be an actual mass of people. What was the mass of people? Look, we have a quorum for a vote. You need to have quorum for a vote. Whatever the quorum is, whatever your board is, whatever your homeowners association, whatever it is, you have to have quorum in order to do it. The rabbi said the quorum that you need for a minyan, for a prayer group, was 10. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
What they're, they thought, yeah.
Yeah.
So I just told the story about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't love that. I don't love that rule. Look, there was a wonderful episode of the show Northern Exposure years ago, where the doctor, the Jewish guy who was not very religious, Dr. Fleischman or whatever, the Rob Morrow character, his dad died and he needed a minyan, and his friend, the woman, the pilot, right? She went around Alaska trying to find 10 Jews for the guy to have for his minyan, right? Because she knew that he said something like, I can't do Kaddish because we need a minyan. And so she went around and she found 10 Jews out in the middle of the bush, right? And there was an Eskimo Jew and there was they found, it was a great episode. It was called The Minyan. And then at the end and it was a good show. It had good, good messages of, like what makes a family, what makes community. And at the end of the episode, she'd spent all this time assembling the people that the guy never met. And then he said, my real community is all of you. My minyan is my friends in this community. You're going to say Kaddish. So, but it was part of the beauty of it was like she had tried to get this minyan for him. And then in the end, he wanted to say Kaddish with her and the other crazy people in the town. So it was a good episode. It's a good lesson about, what is community and, whether.
So they asked us if we'd go. Of course we did. And, me having been bar mitzvah and all that, I understood what's going on. But the other guys, it's like, they didn't know what was going on. So, yeah, they were Jewish, but they didn't understand.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Look, I will tell you, I'm only going to say this. There's a tough thing here though, too, which is that if you're that 10th person that makes up the minyan, then you feel a great sense of worth, right? And if you don't have that, right? If you say, I don't care if there's 10 people or not, I don't care if we're going to count women or, people, kids, whatever the Orthodox group is. And if you're that 10th person for the minyan, you go, they couldn't have done this without me. You feel a sense of worth, right? Right, Sheldon?
I was walking down the street one Saturday morning.
Uh-huh.
I was going to go to service a little later, it wasn't quite time. And a guy came up and grabbed me, said, "Are you Jewish?" Pulled me into his Orthodox synagogue to make a meeting until somebody else came.
Okay.
So yes, I had that.
So almost everybody who's been around in the Jewish community long enough will have had that experience. I've had that experience. Look, you know, part of me, you know, I get it and I feel touched that I was able to do that. But I'm like, yeah, but if you counted the women that were standing here the whole time, I wouldn't have to do that. But it's like, you know, I'm not going to change their mind about it. And in that moment, am I facilitating, you know, this or so whatever. I mean, I have mixed feelings about it. I'm not going to say no because I would like count her and you're not, you know, she knows it better than I do. So whatever. But all right. So let's look at Psalm 29, which this one, okay, well, this one has this one's got Canaanite all over it. So yeah, if your book said it was only because it was connected to, because it was juxtaposed next to this one. But this one is also a Psalm of David. Well, that one just said La David.
Now,
This one's used more
how
like
do you identify this as Canaanite?
You'll see.
Okay.
You'll see right away. You'll see it in the first line. Go for it, Rosemary.
Ascribe to the Lord, O divine beings, ascribe to the Lord glory and strength. Ascribe to the Lord the glory of his name. Bow down to the Lord, majestic in holiness. The voice of the Lord is over the waters. The God of glory thunders, the Lord over the mighty waters. The voice of the Lord is power. The voice of the Lord is majesty. The voice of the Lord breaks cedars. The Lord shatters the cedars of Lebanon. He makes Lebanon skip like a calf, Sirion like a young wild ox. The voice of the Lord kindles flames of fire. The voice of the Lord convulses the wilderness. The Lord convulses the wilderness of Kadesh. The voice of the Lord causes hinds to calve and strips forests bare, while in his temple all say, glory. The Lord sat enthroned at the flood. The Lord sits enthroned, King forever. May the Lord grant strength to his people. May the Lord bestow on his people well-being.
So Gail, do you see now why we consider this maybe a Canaanite psalm?
Well, it starts with beings, you know, the
Oh,
first, yeah.
oh yeah, and that's a generous translation of it.
Oh.
Divine beings. What does B'nai Elim mean? What does your translation say, Reverend Lynn? What does the King James say? Verse 2. No, verse 1. So the King James completely and did what the rabbis did. Oh, B'nai Elim is the mighty. It's people. It's not even divine beings. B'nai Elim literally means the sons of God. B'nai Elim, B'nai Elohim. B'nai El is God's, or is God, and Elim are plural. The sons of gods. These are demigods. These are divine beings. I mean, divine beings is fine, but B'nai Elim, if you translate it as divine beings, oh, that's the angels, which is what the rabbis would go with, or they would go with, you know, heroes or, you know, the mighty. No. And so, you know, what will, you know, this is what Wikipedia says about it. I mean, look, Psalm 29 is an example of an enthronement psalm, right? So it says right here, in the 19th and 20th centuries, so 100 years ago, 150 years ago, there were scholars who said that it seems like it was the Persian period, right? So that is 445 to 333, literally late, the latest part of the Bible. However, more recent scholarship says that it is similar to the Song of the Sea, which is from Exodus, right? The song Shirat Hayam, befitting a pre-exilic context. Cross, right? That's Frank Moore Cross, one of the great professors of Bible. He says that it is dependent on Canaanite mythology, particularly the Baal cycle, which are myths about Baal, the god of the lightning, thunder, rain god, that God is oftentimes also similar to, and again, battled for followers, right, in northern Israel in particular, that Baal was the god that the people would turn to if they weren't worshiping God, right? And he says it is no later than the 10th century, which is the time of King David. Similarly, Friedman, which is one of my professors, David Noel Friedman, says, he was the editor of the Anchor Bible, he says Psalm 29 may be dated as early as the 12th century. And that dude was a smart dude, making it among the oldest portions of literature in the Hebrew Bible. So what I'm telling you is that 100 and 150 years ago, people were saying it's a relatively new part of the Bible. And then when scholars came along with the archaeology and with the scholarship of the last 50, 100 years behind them, they said, and when we discovered the Canaanite text, which we didn't have 200 years ago, they said, oh my gosh, this is the Canaanite text. These are the Psalms that the Canaanites were singing, and we borrowed it from them. Now, look, we have to deal with the fact that this seems like a very polytheistic version of God, of what's going on here. God is telling the other gods, bow down before me. Look at my strength. My power is better than everybody's. Literally, I destroy the waters, right? My voice knocks down the water, which is part of the Baal cycle, the destruction of the water, which is the story of the creation, which some people found to be also still in Genesis chapter 1, which is God calming the waters, the Spirit of God over the waters. They found to be very similar to the Canaanite version of God destroying the waters and bringing dry land out of the waters. So this is definitely there. But the voice of God, right, over and over again, Kol Adonai, Kol Adonai, Kol Adonai. The voice of God destroys. The voice of God creates. The voice of God subdues. The voice of God literally causes fire. This is a God that is much more like Zeus than like we think God is. God is enthroned.
The very voice of God goes out and
Yes, and calm in a calming way, right? It's not, that's why I don't care. If you tell me that Genesis is based on Canaanite mythology, Babylonian mythology, I got no problem with that. But I'm telling you, that's not what Babylonian mythology says happened. So our version of it is a different version of it, but it is, even if you say it's a version of it, it's still a much different version, which is not like, again, but this seems to actually go back to those more polytheistic visions of a God being the God in charge. Now, part of our instinct would be to say, oh, we must have buried this. Who's gonna bring this one out, right? Let's put this one away, because this one seems way out of the realm of our theology, if you will. Nuh-uh. This Psalm, my friends, for us, it's the 6th paragraph of Kabbalat Shabbat. We sing this as part of Kabbalat Shabbat. Like this has been part of our way of celebrating Shabbat evening. We'll get to the rest of Kabbalat Shabbat because we're not going to get to it until the 90s. But Mizmor Shir Le'Yom HaShabbat, which actually is the Psalm of Shabbat. It actually says Mizmor Le'Yom HaShabbat. That's one of the Psalms of Shabbat. But basically, the Psalms in the 90s, from about 90 through 99, they're sung in slightly different order than they appear in the book. But Kabbalat Shabbat includes Lecha Dodi and these Psalms, right? And Psalm 29 is one of those Psalms. Here, I'll just show you quickly. No, it doesn't actually. Let me just see if it says the Kabbalat Shabbat Psalms, but we didn't bury it. Not only did we not bury it, we also recited at Sukkot, we recited at Shavuot in some traditions. And when we take out the Torah on Shabbat, we quote this psalm. We actually sing this psalm. Let me put it back up. we sing the song. Havu ladonai kavod shemo. Hishtachavu ladonai behadra kodesh. I mean, we havu ladonai. I mean, we literally, when we march around with the Torah, we don't always do it, but I mean, we don't always do it, but we've been doing it for a long time. We march around with the Torah and we say that this is God's power. Kol Adonai, this is the voice of God. So we've totally recontextualized it. We don't have any kind of, well, this is God speaking to the other gods. We have, this is the Torah, and the Torah is coming out with this kind of strength. Now, it does end with this, I think, and again, very similar line. This is why when we look at Psalm, at the end of Psalm 28, talks about God's strength. Adonai oz lamo umaoz Yeshua Mashiach. You know, here though it does say the Moshiach, the anointed. That's where we're already talking about a Moshiach. That's how we know, by the way, that it's a later psalm. Like that Psalm 28 is a later psalm. But look at the end. Look at that same phrase. Adonai oz leamo. Right? God gives strength to his people. Yes, I know. Sheldon's already singing it. This psalm, we sing every day when we eat a meal. This is literally the last line when it said, I showed it up there. This is the last line of Birkat Hamazon. Adonai oz le'amo yiten, Adonai oz le'amo yiten, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. This is the last line of the Birkat Hamazon. And it's a beautiful line. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful line. It's a beautiful line of Torah. May the Lord grant strength to his people. May the Lord bestow on his people shalom. May they have well-being. So again, it's great for them to have strength. It's a wonderful thing. Let us have strength. But what's the last line? Bless us with shalom. Bless us with peace. And it's a beautiful line. I mean, you literally could end any synagogue service with that. You know, you could end any church service with it. May God grant strength to to his people, to the Lord's people. You know, you don't have to use the male. May the Lord bestow, Adonai's blessing on. So edited together about 2,000 years ago, right? So not until the Greco-Roman period, that we have to say, okay, well, these are the books that we're going to take with us on the road. The Torah, really got put together during the exile period, the first 5 books, but the rest of the Torah really came about, the editing and putting it all together. But, did Psalms already exist as the 150 chapters? That's where, look, we can reconstruct a little bit of how this happened because we can see that there were slight variations, but the slight variations kind of indicate that as a rough structure, they were already put together by the period of the Septuagint and those kind of periods, because we can see there's slight differences, right? The numbering of them is slightly different, but it's close enough that it's not wildly different. And I know that's a weird thing. Like, how can you make an argument from the fact that it's not the same, but I say when it's almost the same, when the version of it is almost the same, then you got to say, well, come on, it's one off, and it is. We talked about that. Psalm 9 and 10 is put together in the Septuagint, which is why some of the Psalms are off and some of the church versions, some of those versions are off, but it's one off. I mean, come on. That doesn't mean it wasn't organized by that period. It means that there was a slight variation by that point. But it seems like, come on, it was pretty well put together by that period. If it's only one off, I think the argument is much stronger that it was pretty well assembled, by that time. So it definitely was by that time, right? But by the time of the destruction of the temple. But how many hundreds of years before was 150 Psalms? Because it probably was more at one point. Some Psalms didn't get in. Correct. And not only did they keep it, but then we as Jews who, by the time of the Romans were well beyond even arguing this anymore, how did we not see it and say, Gosh, this is problematic. This sounds a lot more like what our Greek friends would sing about Zeus and feel comfortable with it. But they felt comfortable with it. They look, maybe because it had been sung for hundreds of years and everyone knew it. But it's buried there, right? So it's buried there in Psalm 29. It's right next to some other, like, look at Psalm, we're going to look at Psalm 30. This psalm begins right away. This is a psalm for the dedication of the house. The previous psalm, Psalm 28, mentioned the Moshiach, mentioned the anointed one, which means there's kings by that period. Well, if we're saying that that psalm, if Cross and Friedman and these other guys are saying that that psalm existed before King David, there was no Moshiach during the time of Psalm 29. Now you're telling me that Psalm 28, there is a Moshiach, and in Psalm 30, this is a psalm that we say was dedicated, was for the temple. Look, I don't know that it was. Could have been even later, but you'll see why Psalm 30, we think, was from the time when there's a temple. Now, look, you could say that there's a temple in this psalm, in Psalm 29, because look, it says right here, it says when I went past it, it says, yeah, while in his temple. But I will tell you that at least from when Friedman makes an argument that this is from the 1200s, before the temple existed of Solomon, he means that when it says in his temple, it means God's temple up in heaven, not his temple down below. So, yeah, we didn't bury it. That's all I'm going to tell you. We did not bury that psalm, and you would think we would have. And again, in some ways, it's one of the most quoted psalms because it's part of Shabbat, it's part of the Birkat Hamazon, it's part of the Torah service. You're constantly hit with it. I'm constantly hit with Psalm 29. And I will tell you, it's not the most polytheistic psalm. We'll get to Psalm 82, which takes it one step further than that. That's the most polytheistic psalm. But Psalm 29 is number 2 in polytheistic imagery.
Is
Very
this a
hard.
group? Is this a group of psalms that are called the Hallelujah Psalms? Is
Nope.
that?
Nope. We'll get to those. When we get to those kind of psalms, and as I said, when we get to the Shir Hamalot psalms and the songs of ascent, we'll get to collections or minor collections of psalms within the psalms. These are all over the place, all over the place.
So are you saying that the psalms are sort of grouped by feeling and not chronological? That
I would say that people who've studied the organization of psalms, and there are people who that's their life, they study psalms, they will tell you that we can make that what happened is that people bundled psalms together. I mean, this is the people who I trust on this. People bundled psalms together. And during the course of the psalms being gathered together, think about it this way. Somebody has a bundle of sticks, and this person has a bundle of sticks. And then you start bundling people's sticks together. The sticks are gonna be from different places, and people bundle them somewhat differently. And sometimes the bundles stay together, and then sometimes the bundles fell apart, but they didn't throw the psalm away. They just they didn't put the stick and throw it away. They just put it in a different place. And so
just like different temples have different traditions.
no.
No?
Every synagogue has the 150 psalms that we have. Since the beginning of rabbinic Judaism, the psalms are the psalms. Since the beginning of Christianity, the psalms are the psalms. So that's why by about 100 years before the destruction of the temple, the psalms were definitely organized in the ways that they were. And the organization goes back even further. So some of these bundles go back 1,000 years. But again, sometimes the bundles are very easy to see where they're together. Other places, it's not easy to see why they're in the order that they're in. That's why when people try to figure it out, some of it's obvious, and in other parts, you have to use more speculation. And then in other parts, we just say, we don't know why this psalm was put in this place. So again, there are people who say, well, they had to put it in roughly 5 sets of 30. But even they know that there's not exactly, it doesn't fall that way. here, I'll show you. I'll just show you the, I'll show you the, I'll show you the, I'll show you the rough organization of how the, it's not, I'm just saying, it's not that important, but I'll show you the rough breakdown of how the 5 sections, how the 5 sections play out. I'll just bring this up for you. So roughly Psalms 1 through 41. So we're still in that first section. No, they just call, I mean, when people call them, book 1. No, because that's not, Psalms of Ascent are in book 5, but they're not only, it's not just Psalms of Ascent. The Hallelujah Psalms are in there too. So Psalms 1 through 41 are where we're in right now, would be the first book, and then Psalms 42 to 72. So these 5 sections, we know that these sections exist, but they're not exactly, they're not exactly 30, 30 each. First one's 40, the next one's 30. I mean, obviously they come out roughly to 30, but you can see book 4 is smaller, is only, is 16.
That Lutheran don't use the depictions of songs, the sorrowful songs.
They cut them out? They don't do them? Interesting.
I mean, they're in the Psalter.
Yeah, but they don't use them. Look, I've been paying more attention this year to the Book of Common Prayer, where, what order the psalm, what the psalm is used for, what day of the week it's used for, or the day of the month. But, yeah, it's tough. That would be tough to do, because so many of the psalms we've already seen they're not happy. I mean,
I don't know that that's true. I read that, but
it would be hard to only focus on. I know that like my kind of reading of or listening of how people use Psalms today, that the Psalms that are the more happier Psalms, if you will, the less scary Psalms are the ones that, Christian contemporary writers put to music. They want to use the ones that are, it seems like they want to use the ones that are more upbeat. But, gosh, there's so many of them that are, and maybe that's why a lot of them are put to music, because a lot of them are kind of scary. And again, I don't know that contemporary people would really be that comfortable. Like when I read Psalm 29, like when I read the translation of it, again, not when I sing it in Hebrew, not because I've sung it in Hebrew since I was a kid, but I didn't really think about it when I was a kid. I never thought about how pagan this is. I mean, I like now I read it, I'm like, this is so pagan. How do you not know that this is pagan? And I never thought about it, but now I do. Now that's why if I ever heard a modern version of it, I have heard modern versions of it, but it's usually, I'll play you a modern version of it. I like this version of it, but it's the last line. I'll play it for you. I'll play you this one. It's yeah, since we're in Psalm 29, I'll play you, let me just play you this. I mean, it's pretty nice. I mean, I know the woman who wrote it. I'll play you her. I think this is one of her better compositions. Let me just share this up here. She's a musician. She's a rabbi from Arizona, actually. One second. I gotta share sound. Okay, so let me play this. Kind of a nice kavanah, nice little thought, intention. it's the only thing that she sings. She sings the last line. She's not singing the rest of the song. So, yeah, I mean, that's how people make sense of it today. I'm going to sing the last line of it, which I said is part of the Birkat Hamazon. So let's take, yeah, yep.
The house. I know it's a legitimate word because
Mm-hmm.
I don't know Hebrew that well, but I know.
Yep.
It's the house.
Yep.
So what house are we talking about? The temple?
Yeah. So they called it Hanukat Habayit, right? Now, so we say Mizmor, a song of Hanu. So what's weird is they actually translated this wrong. Mizmor Shir Hanukat Habayit. This is a song for the dedication of the house, Le David, of David. You should not say a psalm of David because the only way you translate what they did is Mizmor Shir. So a Mizmor Shir you could say is a psalm, a song, but they actually put Mizmor LeDavid with a psalm of David. They put these two words together, and then Shir Hanukat Habayit, a song for the dedication of the house. A Mizmor Shir could be together because Mizmor Shir is together in Psalm Shabbat. Mizmor Shir LeYom HaShabbat. Here they just decided, the translator just decided, I'm going to put this word with this word and not put Mizmor Shir together. Shir Hanukat Habayit, a song for the dedication of the house, but Mizmor and Shir both, Mizmor means psalm and Shir means song. But they didn't put a Mizmor Shir, a psalm, a song for the dedication of the house, Le David, of David. Le David is the only thing there that's together. Well, it's the only thing there that tells us it's a psalm of David, but they put the Mizmor Le David together there. Shir Hanukat Habayit means that the person who did the superscription to this was basically saying, we believe that this psalm was what David would have said for the dedication, not because he didn't build it, but for the dedication when he first brought the ark into Jerusalem, that he would have sung this for the dedication of the temple, when he first dedicated the temple in Jerusalem. So that's a pretty hefty comment to make about. Let's look at why that would even be the case. So here's Psalm 30.
I extol you, O Lord, for you have lifted me up and not let my enemies rejoice over me. O Lord, my God, I cried out to you, and you healed me. O Lord, you brought me up from Sheol, preserved me from going down into the pit. O you faithful of the Lord, sing to him and praise his holy name. For he is angry but a moment, and when he is pleased, there is life. One may lie down weeping at nightfall, but at dawn there are shouts of joy. When I was untroubled, I thought, I shall never be shaken. For you, O Lord, when you were pleased, made me firm as a mighty mountain. When you hid your face, I was terrified. I called to you, O Lord. To my Lord I made appeal. What is to be gained from my death, from my descent into the pit? Can dust praise you? Can it declare your faithfulness? Hear, O Lord, and have mercy on me. O Lord, be my help. You turned my lament into dancing. You undid my sackcloth and girded me with joy, that my whole being might sing hymns to you endlessly. O Lord, my God, I will praise you forever.
Now, nothing in this psalm says anything about the temple. Nothing. Right? So when we look at this psalm, we go, what does this have to do with the temple? Now, what people definitely felt about this psalm was that this psalm really captures David's life, right? That this is a psalm that seems to be, yes, and seems to be turning, David's saying, gosh, God, whenever you're with me, good things happen. And whenever you've been with me, I've been successful. I've been happy. Look, because the word right at the top there says Hanukkah, we consider this a psalm for Hanukkah. So there are people who sing this song for Hanukkah because it has the word Hanukkah, which means dedication, right? Hanukkah literally means dedication. And so people would say this is for Hanukkah, right? But it's a psalm that really captures, King David's feelings. Now, again, the psalm talks about Sheol, which is the netherworld, and again, calling it a pit, which is a place. And the word pit in Hebrew literally means a pit. It's a well. It's a place of darkness. So for us to say that like the word bor in Hebrew means a well, it means a hole. So when it says the pit in capital P, yeah, because it's juxtaposed with Sheol. But Sheol clearly is the down below place. And again, not a place you want to be. So Sheol doesn't seem like a good place. And it also seems to be a place that you can be brought out of, by the way. God, is not going to be angry forever. God's anger is just a moment and things can change. And so a lot of people look at the psalm as a really positive psalm, right? That if I ever feel like things are going bad, it can change. Not only can it change, it's going to change. And God will turn I don't love this translation, but it's definitely connected to the word lament and definitely connected to the kinds of things that we say at a funeral. The lament. What's the translation you have there, Mary, in the King James for line 12, sorry? Yeah. So that's the way it's usually translated. What do you have, Reverend Lynn? Mourning. Yeah. People usually like the word mourning, though lament maybe is more of a literal sense. Look, the root for it, hesped, is also the word we use for eulogies. So we use the word hesped in Hebrew for the eulogy that we give at a funeral. So lamenting or mourning is definitely there. But when you could also literally translate and again, you've that's why it's mourning, because it's really what we do at a funeral. You've turned my actions of sadness into, literally in the word in Hebrew, machol is the word for dance. And
Translation says you have turned my wailing.
yeah, which is also something that people would do at funerals. They would wail, right? They ululate. But this is part of every part of it. That's why the King James translation of mourning, you've turned my mourning into dancing. It does translate it's dancing, right? No, you said what do they translate it as? The second? Yeah. Dancing has got to be there, I think. But it's the dancing, of course, of celebration. It's the dancing that people do at a party or at a wedding. So you've flipped my wailing, and that's the Hebrew for it. Hafkah. You've literally flipped it. That's the word hafak means to flip. You've flipped it. You've turned it over.
Is this where we get the idea that, the phrase is often for the hostages, that we will dance again? We are lamenting now, but the Jews will
Yeah.
dance again?
Yeah, people use it all the time. Yeah, for doing that, but also when we tell somebody, yeah, we're going to turn your sadness, right? So if you tell somebody at a funeral, this is a terrible day, but we have good, you have a grandchild along, you don't say it necessarily at the funeral, but you say to somebody as you're comforting in the appropriate time, you say, look, you have and by the way, maybe you don't even tell them until the baby comes, right? You say, last year you were crying. I mean, we had a baby naming a couple of days ago, and I said to the family, they had two grandparents that both died, and I was at their funeral. I was at the funerals, and now they had a baby naming, I said, literally, you know, a year ago you had 2 funerals and now you have a baby naming. So people do have in their lives things to look forward to.
That how the next sentence kind of dovetails into it.
Yeah. You've turned my clothes of mourning, my sackcloth into clothes that I can wear, you know, to celebrate in. You know, now I'm wearing a wedding dress. So, but people love this image of turning mourning into dancing, and I'm actually going to play you a little tune that some of you know because it's one of her most famous songs. And again, this one, when we talk about songs that kind of definitely sound of a period, it's weird to think that this song's like 50 or 45 years old. Because I remember when it came out, when these songs were coming out, and people were going, "Oh, this is great! You know, this is contemporary music." Not so contemporary anymore, but I still love it. I think some of you will love it too. Some of you will know this, especially if you went to summer camp or if you went to were part of. Oh wait, I got to do this right. Yeah, I'm doing it right. So this is the legendary Debbie Friedman. No, it's not. That was a hot Charlotte, which shouldn't have been. We heard it. Oh. I don't know why it's playing the wrong one. You know what I'll do? I'll play it on. Sorry, I'll play it on. I'll play it on Spotify because it's not coming through. Yeah. This is the great Debbie Friedman, who gave us a lot of. No, it's not coming up. Oh, wait. Hold it. I really wanted to play this. It's got it. You know what? Let me see if I can bring it up here. It's not coming up with. Yeah, here we go.
You turn my mourning into dancing, so that my soul might sing to you, so that my soul sing to you, and it not be still. You turn my mourning into dancing, so that my soul might sing to you, so that my soul sing to you, and it not be still. Oh God, my God, forever I will thank you. Oh God, my God, forever I will thank you. Oh dear God. Now I sing praises to the Holy One, who lifts me up when I have fallen, and I cry to you to heal me, and you have answered all my prayers. Now I sing praises to the Holy One, who lifts me up when I have fallen, and I cry to you to heal me, and you have answered all my prayers. Oh God, my God, forever I will thank you. Oh God, my God, forever I will thank you. Oh dear God. I ask you to be.
It sounds so old now. It sounds literally like something out of the 70s, which which is, you know, it sounds like Peter, Paul, and Mary, and those kind of songs that she based her, yeah, how she based her, what she based her music on. And now but at the time, it was really amazing to hear an American Jewish singer using those styles and using traditional texts and giving them contemporary sounds. Now it sounds a little old, but it was really great when it came out. And that's a beautiful, I mean, obviously she began with "You've Turned My Mourning into Dancing," but it is, you can see she drew from throughout the Psalms. She drew from "You healed me," you lifted me up. All those parts are in there. And again, the way that she kind of skipped over "You undid my sackcloth and girded me with joy," but she said that I will praise you forever and ever, that I will, for all times. So, she kind of captured the literal, in some ways, the literal words of Elohai Leolam Odecha, that I will thank you. And the word Odecha means literally I will thank you. It doesn't, that's probably what the King James says. It doesn't say praise, it says I will thank you, right? Yeah, so it is this translation's not necessarily even the best translation of that part, but yeah, so she captured that idea that God will help me through tough times. And yeah, it was I would say it was one of her more famous compositions for a long time. Have people heard that before? Rosemary, you've heard that one before, right?
It's not that familiar to me, no.
What about Gail? Have you heard it before?
No, I've never heard it. We never heard it at Swig.
Yeah, I think it's not as popular as, kind of dating myself, that it was definitely popular in the 70s and 80s, and maybe into the early 90s. It was still sung at camp, and it was still kind of it was one of her newer, like when it came out, it was kind of like an approach to Psalms that people knew.
I didn't go to a Jewish camp, so.
No, I know. I'm just saying. I remember when she first was, kind of burst onto the scene. Somebody who is taking traditional texts and because look, you can write songs about anything, but when you actually take a psalm and work on it, that's a really special thing, because you're basically grounding yourself in the text, and you're going to say, look, if someone wants to have a musical version of this psalm, I just gave it to you. And I think that's it's a tough thing to do, to say, hey, I'm going to write a version of a psalm. And we're going to get to some that people, all different, we've heard different genres, but for Debbie Friedman to do that was really a way of saying,
Yeah, it was special at the time. It really was. Even with my kids, they grew up with Misha Barak. We grew up singing her songs and making it. It's hard to think that it's old now, but it was so new then.
But what was also interesting is, again, like Misha Barak is, she used a format of doing a prayer for healing, which was also in a different way groundbreaking. But what's interesting is that is not really based on the text. Only the words Misha Barak, Misha Barak Avotenu V'Imotenu. Other than that, none of that's from a text. None of that's from the Torah. So, and she did that with other music. But when you actually take lines of Torah and turn them into music, that's a bold thing to do. And it's also, I think to some extent, you're going to create maybe a version of a song that people will do, for a long time. So it's tough to do. And again, people do it with liturgy. They do it with a line of a prayer, if you're going to do a version of a prayer. But if you're just going to do a song, a Jewish song, and you're going to, sing a song about something, and it's not necessarily based on the text, or it uses the line from the text, even if it uses a line from the text, if it's not really grounded in the text, it could be a great song, but it also may never, it takes a certain courage to literally do that. And think about how rarely it's been done. When you think about turn, 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 that worked. Turn, turn, turn worked, but it's very rare that someone literally took lines of the text and just used the text. It's very rare that people do that. And again, she didn't quite do it. She rearranged the text, but everyone knew when you use that line, you're using the text, turning mourning into dancing. Anyways, it's a beautiful idea. It's a beautiful message, and it's completely different than the previous psalm. I mean, it completely different. The last psalm was an enthronement psalm of God. It was a psalm about God's power, and it was a psalm about God, exercising power in the world. This psalm was really one of, yeah, God, you're there for me, and we've seen it in the other psalms. And this is clear, like more connected to a person's reactions and a feeling of God, you're with me during my tough times, and you're going to help turn those things. And again, the fact that it was seen as a psalm of the dedication of the temple is wild, because it's really not about the temple at all. It's not about at all this idea that, let's come into the temple to pray. I mean, we've already seen other psalms, especially again, psalms where we talk about God's temple or the temple or the house of the Lord. That's not God's temple in heaven, and that's not even there. So it's interesting that became a psalm of associated with David dedicating the temple. This psalm is actually a little bit more similar to the previous one, to Psalm 30. So let's look at Psalm 31.
I seek refuge in you, O Lord. May I never be disappointed. As you are righteous, rescue me. Incline your ear to me. Be quick to save me. Be a rock, a stronghold for me, a citadel for my deliverance. For you are my rock and my fortress. You lead me and guide me as befits your name. You free me from the net laid for me, for you are my stronghold. Into your hand I entrust my spirit. You redeem me, O Lord, faithful God. I detest those who rely on empty folly, but I trust in the Lord. Let me exult and rejoice in your faithfulness when you notice my affliction, are mindful of my deep distress, and do not hand me over to my enemy, but grant me relief. Have mercy on me, O Lord, for I am in distress. My eyes are wasted by vexation, my substance and body too. My life is spent in sorrow, my years in groaning. My strength fails because of my iniquity. My limbs waste away. Because of all my foes, I am the particular butt of my neighbors, a horror to my friends. Those who see me on the street avoid me. I am put out of mind like the dead. I am like an object given up for lost. I hear the whisperings of many, intrigue on every side as they scheme together against me, plotting to take my life. But I trust in you, O Lord. I say, you are my God. My fate is in your hand. Save me from the hand of my enemies and pursuers. Show favor to your servant, as you are faithful. Deliver me. O Lord, let me not be disappointed when I call you. Let the wicked be disappointed. Let them be silenced in Sheol. Let lying lips be stilled that speak haughtily against the righteous with arrogance and contempt. How abundant is the good that you have in store for those who fear you, that you do in the full view of men for those who take refuge in you. You grant them the protection of your presence against scheming men. You shelter them in your pavilion from contentious tongues. Blessed is the Lord, for he has been wondrously faithful to me, a veritable bastion. Alarmed, I had thought, I am thrust out of your sight. Yet you listened to my plea for mercy when I cried out to you. So love the Lord, all you faithful. The Lord guards the loyal and more than requites him who acts arrogantly. Be strong and of good courage, all you who wait for the Lord.
Yep. So this psalm is definitely much more of a person talking about their relationship with God, as we've seen. We've seen Psalms where people are feeling under the gun, and again, much longer than the previous Psalms that we've read that are about 10 to 15, verses long. This Psalm kind of goes back to Psalm 22, the Psalm that was the basis for the Passion narrative. People, trying to get the person. This is really a person, much different than Psalm 29, which is, like we said, it's like an enthronement psalm. This is a psalm of somebody who is getting beaten up, and again, starts off with, God, you're always there for those, who need it, who need them, who need you, and then right. Yeah, it does feel like. So it starts off with, you're my rock, you're my fortress, you're my stronghold, into your hand, blah, blah, blah. And then have mercy on me, right? This is where it starts to turn. I'm in distress. My eyes are weak. So you think like up till here that, I guess, kind of right here is where it's still all good. And then here it starts to, it's even included in here where he starts, let me exalt in your faithfulness, etc. And then it starts, when you notice my affliction, you are mindful of my deep distress. Do not hand me over to my enemy. So here's where it starts to, here's where the negative is starting to be introduced. And then it starts, have mercy on me. I am in distress. So that's where, wait, it sounded like everything was going good. And then you're like, no, it's really not good. Which is why, like you said, John, it feels like it's 3 different Psalms, because then at the end, everything is good. But it's interesting because it does follow, kind of the way sometimes we feel, which is, yeah, everything's going good. And you're like, you know what? It's really not going good. It's really, really bad. When I think about what's really happening, it's really bad. But again, it's going to get better. So it's almost like the person comes into it going, oh yeah, it's great. God, it's all good. God's always with me. Yeah, I'm crying all the time. I'm in distress. My eyes are wasted by vexation, right? My body is wasting away. And then, of course, he says, it's going to be good. And God has been faithful to me, a veritable bastion. Anybody see any lines that stick out as familiar to you? Anybody? Maybe not in the English, but in the Hebrew. I'll take you back to a line that you've heard.
I don't know about
In your
familiar.
hands I entrust my spirit.
Yeah, where's that from, Rosemary?
It's in the New Testament.
Oh, no. I don't think you were going to hit me with that one. No, Rosemary, it's in your prayer book.
Yes.
Anybody? Well, if I sing it to you in Hebrew, I can sing it to you in about 1 million different ways. I just gave you a clue. It's line 6. Yes, it's into you. And it's a beautiful line. I love it. Into your hand, I entrust my spirit. I don't even know which version to sing it in. Yes, right?
Adon Olam?
There you go, Gail.
Good for me.
You got it, Gail.
Yep.
Be'ado af kidruchi.
Right.
But we changed the end part, which is Be'adi shan velo ira.
Now, did we write that psalm during medieval times, right? When people are afraid to go home. That's why we sing it at the end, because
yeah, but it does, and it's funny
attacked.
too, because I think people sounds like it's Christian, right? I entrust my spirit to God. But it's not. It's from the Psalms. It's from, the line that you would say, look, when we sing it in the Adon Olam, thank you, Gil, that was awesome.
I thought so.
When we sing that psalm, right? When we sing that part of Adon Olam, when we think about that, here, I'll show you. The way we end it, the way we hit it with the second part of it, And I'll show you in Hebrew. And I love it because there's a lot of different ways of singing it. But I actually I don't know if Craig Talman actually wrote it, but it's a part that I know that he sings it. But it's Be'ado afkid ruchi be'tishan velo ira v'im ruchi geviati Adonai. I can't remember who sings it, but the way we sing it in Adon Olam is into his hand I commit my spirit when I sleep and I awake, Be'edishan value, and with my spirit, the imruchi giviati, Adonai li velo ira, right? I will not fear. Right? The Lord is with me, I will not fear. So it's a really pretty, it's a really pretty end of the Adon Olam. It's the way it ends. Yeah.
It's only that one line from. You have that song?
Yeah. Look, we don't know how old it is, right? So some people say that Ibn Gvirol, who was a Spanish Jewish poet, wrote it in the Middle Ages. We know that it's been around since the 15th century, right? So some people think that, again, it was written in Spain originally. So I don't know for sure. And again, people who study this aren't sure. But if by the Middle Ages, again, according to the custom of Sephardim and in British synagogues generally, it is sung by the congregation at the close of Shabbat and festival morning services, and among Ashkenazi Jews sometimes. I've been doing it at the end of services my whole lifetime, and I didn't invent that. In Keloheinu or Adon Olam. So in the German rite, right? Look, it says it is recited daily at the beginning of morning service. So it's not like that was the Ashkenazi way. In the Middle Ages or in the later Middle Ages, it was sung at the beginning. So for so widespread a beloved hymn, the traditional tunes are unusually few. Only 4 or 5 of them deserve to be called traditional. Right? So a lot of the versions, Adon Olam Asher Malach. I mean, there's so many different versions of it, right? Is often sung to many different tunes on account of its meter. Right? Iambic tetrameter. Many synagogues like to use seasonal tunes. For example, the Shabbat before Hanukkah, Ma'od Sur, we've done Yankee Doodle. We've done Yankee Doodle for 4th of July. And the Uzi Hitman version of Adon Olam became very famous. It came out of the 70s. Adon Olam Asher Malach B'terem Kol Yitzirni. And so he was an Israeli composer, and he wrote it for the Hasidic film song festival. And so they, that version became super popular. But it's a really beautiful end to that, end to that song is Afkid Ruchi, because what's interesting about the phrase and what's so interesting about it is that the way we kind of put it in Adon Olam is that when I go to sleep, my spirit is in your hands, right? That's kind of I pray my soul to keep, right? When you said, as I lay me down to sleep. It's a terrible sign. It scares the hell out of kids. Somehow my mom taught me that. Like my mom sent me to bed with that. And, it's a pretty Christian thing, but I don't know. My mom was pretty Jewish. She gave me, as I lay me down to sleep, I pray my soul, the Lord to keep. If I die before I wake, I pray. It's such a scary song. You terrify a child with the fact that you never had that? Oh my gosh. I had that as a kid. I don't know. You never heard that? I had that as a kid.
I did. I had that as a kid. I remember it.
But I did, and I said, Mom, that's kind of scary. She goes, I know, it's just a traditional thing to say. And I said, is that our tradition? I remember asking her that, and I think when I realized what was in Adon Olam, I knew that it was there. It came from there, So we definitely associated with going to sleep at night. And so at the end of Adon Olam, at the end of services, you kind of go home and going, I pray that, that's why they said it. That when you die, in case you, no, but we believe that at night our soul left our body. And so if our soul didn't come back to the body, then God would hold on to it. God would keep it. And so this is the
People
idea.
did die. We live in a time,
I,
thank
I know,
God,
I
where
know.
we don't.
Look, I think most people would hope they die in their sleep, right? Like, I kind of do. But but people, yeah. But the people who said, "Hey, our soul leaves our body," and that's why when we get up in the morning, the first blessing we're going to say is "Modeh ani lefanecha, shechazarta bi nishmati," that you returned my neshama, that you returned my. You don't have. So here the word, yes, for here the word is not neshama or nefesh; it is ruach. It is my spirit, and so that is the word we use for spirit, which we understand at some level is the basest, simplest level of our energy. Yeah, the ruach is the energy, is the animating energy of our body. But even animals have a ruach, right? This is where the rabbis start to get metaphysical. Yeah, yes, it's the animating force of the universe, but it's the energy of life. But then the question is, what about the neshama or the nefesh? So the nefesh is sometimes considered the next level of the soul, which is a human version, and maybe even animals have a nefesh, but it's some type of level of our ego. It's our ego level. But there's two different words, right? So because then maybe they're all interchangeable. Look, right here they use the word spirit. I'm only telling you the word ruach is the word used in Hebrew. So, the idea that then there's a neshama, which is the highest spirit, right? That's the spirit that we say is God's spirit. It's actually God's essence that's in us. That's the the incorruptible, eternal spirit out of me. Yeah, my neshama. But your neshama is your goodness, if you will, too, is your divine goodness. But nefesh would be kind of intermediate. But the ruach is literally something that's not even, that's just like your energy. Now, clearly here, if God is entrusting, if my spirit is in your hands, God, then it's clearly something of value. I'm just telling you, there's no understanding here that ruach is any different than nefesh or neshama, but the rabbis definitely looked at the different uses of them and said, look, there's a reason why there's three different words for that. And so they said there must be different versions. And it's not like they didn't invent that. The Egyptians have three different words for, they had a trinity, if you will, of the spirit, which of course Christians then had as well. So a triune understanding of the spirit goes back to the Egyptians had Ka, Ba, and whatever the other one was. The Egyptians had three levels of spirit that they believe that's in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. So we didn't maybe even invent it. But yes, whether or not that's the spirit that is a different ruach, but again, as Reverend Lynn said, the ruach is what God's energy is at the beginning of the creation. It's God's ruach, God's spirit that's over everything. So again, it's true. She is. She knows where the ruach is. She has the ruach, and we use ruach in a good way, right? As energy is that's what spirit. When people say there's a lot of ruach here in this place, there's a lot of energy. There's a lot of spirit. We need to have spirit here. This phrase at the end, we use this a lot too. Yiskuvi ametz, be strong and of good courage, all you who wait for the Lord. I see that as definitely used in Christian, in Christian sources too, that people use that last phrase. But chazak va'amatz, we've talked about before. That's a phrase, be strong, and it's what the Israeli army uses as a motto, be strong and of good courage. It's an idea that, again, that we may have to wait. We may have to wait for we may have to wait for this stuff, for good stuff to happen. But there is this understanding that maybe this is said at the end. There's a tradition, as Reverend Lynn said, as I said, a lot of this psalm sounds like it's stuff that would be used for different stuff. According to the book of Luke, Jesus's last words, which he said, are in. He said a lot of it is Psalm 22. Father, into my hands I commend my spirit. Afkid ruchi, right?
There was no distinction between spirit and the body.
Yeah, I mean, look, we talked about what Jesus's last words are, in at least in one version of the Christian Bible. Jesus said Psalm 31 verse 5, right? I mean, I don't know what else to tell you other than this is, people found this line to be pretty powerful, right? So, but there's a lot into there's a lot in, maybe it's the intimacy of, again, saying, God, I'm placing my spirit in your hands, right? That's so powerful. But, look, there's so much in this that I mean, here is Be'adecha, your fate is in, my fate is in your hand, right? My future, so this is definitely, there's definitely some lines in here that are pretty powerful. But again, lines that we've seen in other parts of the book of Psalms. And again, in this one, Chazak va'amatz is first used in the book of Joshua. All right, well, let's look at, no other questions or comments, Psalm 31. Let's go into, which is, again, it was fairly long, it was 25 verses. Psalm 32 begins with just the two words, Le David a maskil. And again, when we see the word maskil, which we've seen it once before already, it says the Hebrew is uncertain. But again, this is probably some type of direction for the way it was played, or the way that it was, the musical accompaniment, or maybe no musical accompaniment, maybe a cappella. So this phrase, the first line of this, as we've seen before in some of the Psalms, begins with an ashrei, an ashrei. So this is one of those ashrei Psalms. Here we go.
Happy is he whose transgression is forgiven, whose sin is covered over. Happy the man whom the Lord does not hold guilty, and in whose spirit there is no deceit. As long as I said nothing, my limbs wasted away from my anguished roaring all day long. For night and day your hand lay heavy on me. My vigor waned as in a summer drought. Selah. Then I acknowledged my sin to you. I did not cover up my guilt. I resolved, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave the guilt of my sin. Selah. Therefore, let every faithful man pray to you upon discovering his sin, that the rushing mighty waters not overtake him. You are my shelter. You preserve me from distress. You surround me with the joyous shouts of deliverance. Selah. Let me enlighten you and show you which way to go. Let me offer counsel. My eye is on you. Be not like a senseless horse or mule, whose movement must be curbed by bit and bridle. Far be it from you. Many are the torments of the wicked, but he who trusts in the Lord shall be surrounded with favor. Rejoice in the Lord and exult, O you righteous. Shout for joy, all upright men.
Yep. So, this goes back to kind of more of a structure of, a shorter, set of verses, right? A shorter kind of composition of, kind of hitting those points. What's weird about it, of course, is in the Ashrei, which we have obviously a whole psalm called Ashrei. The first two verses here begin with Ashrei. They begin happy, and it also has the phrase that we see in Psalms of Selah, right? When we come to a Selah, we understand that was either something that people sang, or it was a way of, going into a certain type of instrumental. This psalm is oftentimes said on Yom Kippur, because it's about repentance, it's about changing your ways, it's about, kind of figuring out, how to do the right thing. And it finds its way into Jewish and Christian sources, for that reason. But again, when we look at a line, like discovering, or confessing your guilt, and discovering. It's interesting, yeah, that there's definitely an understanding that you found something. Something's been found out. That the problem's been uncovered, but it's almost like you discovered what you did wrong. But this idea that you're going to confess and that you're going to be forgiven, is definitely it's appropriate for those times, that time of year when we're thinking about being forgiven. This is an interesting line for us now in the midst of summer, that, you're handily heavy on me. My vigor waned, like in the hot summer days when I'm all out of energy. I can't have any energy. That's why, when I got sick last week, I was like, I already am burned out by this heat. And now I'm like, now I don't even have energy for going outside. I don't even want to take the dog out. Anyone who lives in a place where the summer is tough, you feel that. And so, yeah, it's definitely appropriate for today. And again, somebody who's not feeling good at the time. But again, of course, it begins with this idea that, we're going to be happy. And even if we're not happy at the moment, of course, it ends with rejoice in the Lord and exalt, O you righteous. So this is, do the right thing. This is an interesting one, of course, that also talks about animals. And in this case, the animals, if you look at the translation, I would, animals get led around, and they need to be controlled because they otherwise wouldn't behave well. It's not speaking highly of the animals. And it's not just the mule, it's the horse too. So the Seuss is a horse. So it is definitely not speaking well of the animals. Is that your translation too? Yeah. What about King James? Yeah. I think that seems to be what the and a bridle. Yeah. I think they understand that. They're trying to say that, like, maybe that's not what the Hebrew means, but it seems as though that's been the accepted translation for a long time. And I mean, I don't know why they had to make that comment, but I guess they're saying it could be something else, but I don't know what else it would be. And they're definitely talking about horses and mules, so that's what you'd use them for. All right, let's look at Psalm 33, which I know the first line of this because it's part of the Shachrit. This one does not begin like here we had a Le David and a Maskil. We have no direction on this psalm. There's nothing that begins. And again, as we said before, sometimes people say, well, maybe it was because it was from the psalm that came before it. It was a break. But this one seems like a very different psalm. It actually kind of goes back a little bit to Psalm 29 in some ways, or some of the psalms that are enthronement style psalms. If they're not enthronement, they're definitely celebrating God. With music, and not just God helps us, but let's sing for God. Well, let's take a look.
Sing forth, O you righteous, to the Lord. It is fit that the upright acclaim him. Praise the Lord with a lyre, with a 10-stringed harp. Sing to him. Sing him a new song. Play sweetly with shouts of joy. For the word of the Lord is right. His every deed is faithful. He loves what is right and just. The earth is full of the Lord's faithful care. By the word of the Lord the heavens were made, by the breath of his mouth all their host. He heaps up the ocean waters like a mound, stores the deeps in vaults. Let all the earth fear the Lord, let all the inhabitants of the world dread him. For he spoke, and it was. He commanded, and it endured. The Lord frustrates the plans of nations, brings to naught the designs of peoples. What the Lord plans endures forever, what he designs for ages on end. Happy the nation whose God is the Lord, the people he has chosen to be his own. The Lord looks down from heaven, he sees all mankind. From his dwelling place he gazes on all the inhabitants of the earth. He who fashions the hearts of them all, who discerns all their doings. Kings are not delivered by a large force. Warriors are not saved by great strength. Horses are a false hope for deliverance. For all their great power, they provide no escape. Truly, the eye of the Lord is on those who fear him, who wait for his faithful care to save them from death, to sustain them in famine. We set our hope on the Lord. He is our help and shield. In him our hearts rejoice, for in his holy name we trust. May we enjoy, O Lord, your faithful care as we have put our hope in you.
Yeah. So again, in some ways it seems a little bit like Psalm 29 about God's power. God makes, the earth, trembles in his, he makes the heavens, the breath of his mouth, creates the angels. He heaps the ocean waters like a mound, right? But what's different about this psalm from Psalm 29 is that this psalm really then still also has God in a relationship with human beings, with us, right? And God God is not just a powerful God, but God is also the God who, is part of, our daily life. So there's definitely a sense of that. But look, we have God. We have God loves the right and the just, right? So God cares about the actions of what people are doing. And so as much as this is a God who makes the waters and the oceans and the heavens and all this stuff, God also is caring about what we do, right? And, also, the word ashrei is used here again as, happy, but here it's the happy are the people. But look again, it starts with this idea that we will sing to God, we will praise God ourselves. And we're starting out with this idea that we're praising God. So this first line, Rananu Tzadikim Adonai Sharim Nava Tehillah, is part of the Shochein Ad. So the Shachrit service traditionally begins with the words Shochein Ad Maram. I'm doing the Shabbat melody, but Shochein Ad Maram Vekado Shemo Rananu Tzadikim Adonai Sharim Nava Tehillah. So it begins with these words. So the Shachrit service actually kind of begins with this idea that we're singing, we're being righteous by singing to God, right? We are establishing our goodness by doing what we're doing, which is singing to God. We also get into, and this is where we kind of talk about the instruments that we play for God, right? So here we have a chinor, which is oftentimes translated as lyre, as a harp, right? Kind of a small harp. And then we also have benevel asor. Now we know that aser is 10, and a nevel is a harp or some kind of harpsichord or some type of stringed instrument that has 10 strings. Because we know what a nevel is, we know what a chinor is, and again, they're mentioned in other psalms, they're mentioned in other parts of psalms where we talk about these instruments, but a nevel asor seems to be a 10-string instrument. We also have, as we said, there's other references to a shminit in the psalms, which the psalms refer to as shminit, which is eight, and something with 8. So we assume that's an 8-string harp. So these different musical instruments that are mentioned in the Psalms themselves tell us that these are, different types of stringed instruments. We do read about other, woodwind and brass trumpets and metal, that was used for that. We also read about percussion and cymbals and drums that are used, but the stringed instruments are mentioned the most, which is one of the reasons why we talk about King David playing a harp, which it does say in the Bible that he played a chinor, that he played a harp. That one of the reasons why, when it talks about them in the Psalms, it makes sense that King David played these because he wrote and he played a harp, and so he would have written these on a lyre or a harp. That he that's why it's mentioned so much, is that he wrote these as he played on the harp. So that's the way we imagine that this happened. That's part of the backstory, if you will, is that David's writing these psalms throughout his life because he's writing on the instrument that he plays. So, the equivalent would be the guy wrote a lot of songs for the guitar because he walked around with a guitar and he played the guitar, and that was his instrument. If he was a piano player, if he's, Billy Joel or, Elton John, he composed things on a piano. But, for somebody who's going to use the guitar, the melodies are going to fit better to the guitar playing. And so that's why, like, the imagination we have of David writing things on his harp, and on this stringed instrument that he played. So it is telling us that we're gonna sing and play music to God in this very famous phrase, Shiru Ladonai Shir Chadash, right? Sing unto God a new song.
David the warrior walking around with a harp.
Yeah. Well, there's warriors who, Gomer Pyle had a guitar. He did.
We're 33 into this, and it feels to me like it's one run-on sentence.
Well, there's definitely some similar themes, but why, look, so the question is, why are there so many Psalms, right? Why are there 10 versions of saying the same thing? I would say that one of the things that's interesting about and by the way, this phrase here, nagain, which is
Same stuff, just words, different sense.
okay, some of them are, right? Some of them are, but some of the Psalms, like this Psalm, isn't really a psalm of distress, right? This is definitely a psalm of celebrating God and being happy. So why do people look for people who sing? Well, let's answer this question, John. The idea that people in ancient Israel only sang songs about God. We don't believe that. We don't believe that they only sang songs about God. We believe they sang songs about love and about heartbreak and about the same things we write most of our songs about. That they sang songs about,
They
funny
probably
stuff.
sang about losing their camel.
Yeah, those are the country. Those are the country singers that sang about losing their camel, losing their wife. What does it say? You play the song backwards, you get your dog back,
Right.
you get your wife back, you get your camel back. So they sang those other songs. We know because we have Shir Hashirim, we have Song of Songs, and we know they sang. Yeah, yeah, but so we have songs, and again, you're right, Mike. Psalm 150 is about all the instruments that we use to sing for God. But look, there definitely are different groupings of psalms, John. I would say that, some people would say there's like 10 different kinds of psalms, but the psalms that we haven't gotten to all of. You haven't seen all the different styles, but the first section, the first 40 psalms, a lot of them are psalms where we say, well, these are psalms of David. These are psalms that definitely feel like this is a guy who has gone through rough times and he's gone through good times, and he's hoping that the good times will come back. And but within that, there are psalms that don't have anything like that. Psalm 29 is not that kind of psalm. Psalm 29 is a psalm of God blowing stuff away. So, I think, to say that they sang lots of songs about God, yeah, they did. But remember, the Psalms were probably collected over 700 years. So if we're thinking about it from the standpoint of, well, why did they have so many songs that kind of say the same thing?
Do you remember, I think it was Leviticus, Mike said, let's just, come on, we can just skip, right?
No, he never would say that.
There was something.
I might have said that, but I might have said, let's cut out Leviticus.
34 to 70. We'll just keep on where we're going.
No, because here's the thing. Within each of these Psalms, I'm showing you a verse or a line that was so powerful that people said, we got to keep singing that. And one of those, and again, when we look at this line right here, Shir Ladonai Shir Chadash, sing unto God a new song. How did people thousands of years ago understand that they were singing a new song, and they felt that this was a new song? Look, we're singing the song, and it's 3,000 years old. So the irony is we're singing to God a new song that's 3,000 years old. That's not new.
Oh, that's new.
Yeah. And we use that phrase, Shir Ladonai Shir Chadash. Rick and Addie just sang a version of Shir Ladonai Shir Chadash at the last service that they did. And it's because someone wrote a new melody to it. So yeah, the words aren't new, but the melody is new. The melody is taking into consideration a completely new, musical style that people never even, really imagined before. So look, if we look at rock music, which is a fusion of, African sounds with English, with English and Scottish sounds that, and things that came from all around the world that blended together in this country. I understand, but that's part of the music, right? Music isn't just words. If I tell you, look, if I write music today and I say, well, how many of the words that I just threw out there were used in a song 1,000 years ago, or not maybe not 1,000 years ago, but 500 years ago, people are going to say, you just use the word love, you use the word heart, you use the word, and you're like, well, those words people have been using for a long time. I would challenge you to say, is a love song from, the Middle Ages that different from a love song today? And so it's going to be the music, right? It's going to be the melody. It's going to be the rhythm.
So to John's point, is how many times do you hear a song on the radio and say, oh, that had to have been written by so-and-so? It's similar songs, at Carole King. Carole King song.
Yes, but when we think about artists, and again, let's say King David wrote some of the Psalms, And I think he might have. I think he might have. So I can't prove it, but I think he might have. I think it's fair to say, it's fair to say that some of them were composed by him, even if it's a few. The fact is that if David wrote Psalms in the midst of everything else he did, and people thought they were good enough to keep, that's pretty amazing that somebody wrote Psalms that in the midst of everything else that they had to do, that they still found a way to compose music. I mean, that's pretty cool. I mean, that's a pretty amazing thing that somebody is still singing these songs and that people in his day valued it. Now you could say, well, he was the king, like they were afraid not to, but they wouldn't have been afraid 500 years later. They could have stopped singing his songs. And we're not going to sing a stupid song that our king wrote. So there's something pretty wild about that. But it also is, there are so many different and again, I know what you're saying, a lot of them, because we're in the first section of it. But when you get to some of the Psalms and the way that they're structured, they're not like this at all. But even so, like in the midst of that Psalm that you say is much like the previous Psalms that we've read, Psalm 22 or whatever else. Shir Ladonai Shir Chadash. That's a beautiful line. If you say, how do you say, Be'ado afkidruchi, that I'm putting my soul into God's hands? That's a beautiful phrase. I mean, you go through songs and think about how many songs you say, well, I don't really care for that song, but that line's really a good line. I mean, I can do that. I can do that with music all the time. I'll say, I don't really care for that song, but that's a really powerful line. A lot of us get vested in the musicians and the music that we like. And so we're afraid to say, well, I like that song in that genre, or I really like I know people say, I hate country music. And I'm like, how do you hate every country song that ever, you don't like this song, you don't like, and I'll challenge people all the time. I say, if the Eagles came out 30 years ago, if they came out today, that song would be a country song. So don't say you don't like country song. You like the Eagles. So people get vested into their modality. But I will tell you, if you think about what the Psalms are and what they did, they open our hearts up to things that like we'd be uncomfortable to say if we just said it. And it's in the song, we allow ourselves to say it. I don't know. The Bible says it was. When the Bible says that David is singing these Psalms and other people are singing these Psalms, and it says that people were singing these songs, that David was singing these songs in the Bible. I got to think that they were. I mean, I got to think that like even if David didn't even write all the Psalms, and the fact that people were singing Psalms and they ascribed them to him, I don't know. And again, how many times do we see this? And you look at what's possible. Is it possible? Yeah, sure, it's possible. Think about it. The Beatles wrote all their songs within a period of like 8 years. That's impossible. You think it's impossible? I mean, they were done by 1970. They were done. 62 to 70. That's when they wrote all those songs. It's insane. Can it happen? I don't know. That was 4 guys. On what? What is this? Who is it? I'll put it on right now. We'll finish with it right now. What's his name? I'm going to put it on. I want to put it on. I don't care. We're playing Christian songs. No, I'm putting it on right now. What's the guy's name? His name. How do you spell his name? I'm going to put it on right now. Ben? Okay.
The melody truly sounds like a church song,
Yes.
not something you'd see at a festival. It sounds
Yes.
like a church song.
Yes.
Debbie Friedman sounded more like I'm going to see Mom and Dad.
I understand. And then people said, I don't want to hear that kind of music anymore. My kids don't want to hear that kind of music. It's tough. All right. Did you send it? Okay. So, I didn't, I said it's 74. What do you want me to tell you? I don't know. I want to put it up right now. Text it. That'll be the quickest.
No, please.
Um,
There.
I set mine at my age. 81.
okay, Reverend Lynn sending me the version that she just played. I'm gonna put it up there. Here we go. Here we go. Okay. We'll
What
play,
is this song?
It's called
sing a new song.
Song.
Dan Shoot is his name. We're doing the hallelujah. Such a good, yeah. Excellent. Thank you, Reverend Lynn. So, we will see people either tomorrow night for Talmud, or we'll see you at Islands tonight for our Eat for TBA. So you can have a veggie burger. You can have whatever you want. And next week we'll be in person again next week. So we'll see you for the rest of Psalms, for the other Psalms that we're going to sing together. And some of us will be here for Friday night with Rick and Addie, where we're going to make sure that there's some Psalms. No, they sent me our stuff. Yeah, they're here. All right, take care, everybody. Thank you, everybody,
Bye,
for being here.
everybody. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.